Is that gonna stay? Yes, it's gonna stay. Sorry, my phone is being really wobbly today for some reason. Hello and welcome back to another video. I'm sorry that I have been absent for another few months. I mean, not on Instagram or I've been doing other things for this, I promise. But I am now 40 weeks pregnant on Sunday. And I'm a bit pissed off, as you can probably imagine. Pretty uncomfortable. I've been watching too many episodes of Love Island. I finished work now, which is quite nice. And yeah, just waiting for the little man. So I thought I'd do a video. I've got my mum coming to stay for a few weeks today. So I thought this is probably going to be my last chance to be able to actually do one and put something on YouTube for once. So that's kind of a bit of a life update. Yeah, my dog went into surgery a few days ago. He's had a hip replacement. So that's a really bad time, just as you're about to give birth and having to juggle that. And yeah, anyway, but he's coming home today. We're going to pick him up. So hopefully all will be well. So fingers crossed for a poor dog. Yes, so body shaming, fattism, fat shaming, really big topic that I wanted to cover because it's a big one in recovery and it's quite a heavy topic. It is quite heavy, you know, and I think a lot of people can sort of feel like it's yet another thing that we're not allowed to talk about. It's yet another thing that is politically incorrect to talk about, and I don't want to make it that. But it is really important because it is a barrier to recovery. So it's extremely key that you're aware of it as you go into diet recovery, and you can look out for the signs of it, and you know how to kind of combat it, really. That's the main thing, to protect your recovery. So what is fat shaming? What is body shaming? It's something that is really pervasive in our culture today. It's part and parcel of dieting and health and weight obsession. It is internalized in all of us. It is reflected in the way that we speak to one another, the way we look at one another, the way we process our everyday worlds. It is ingrained into our health system. It is it's everywhere, basically. It's woven into society, okay? And it is, you know, a way of thinking and talking and looking at different bodies in a certain way. And primarily it's any you know, any body that sits outside of what we would consider normal, healthy, based on the current model of today. Okay, so that model of how a body should look is very much subject to change over time and place. So, you know, what is considered attractive in one culture is very different to what is considered attractive and healthy in another culture. So it's just something to bear in mind, really, is that it's kind of something that you might think is fixed. You know, oh, slim, athletic build is what's healthy, whereas 100 years ago that wasn't the case. You know, much more Rubenesque, plump figures were considered healthy and a status symbol, essentially. So yeah, it's the kind of the lens through which we see our bodies, and I think the way that we hold people to those ideals. So, you know, it might be looking at somebody in the street and thinking, God, they're too fat. Or it might be looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking you don't have big enough pecs or abs or boobs or bum. It might be reading magazines and seeing different celebrities and how much weight they've gained or lost, and there being sort of critical headlines about it and judgment of it. It might be something where you watch a program and you see somebody who is obese, morbidly obese, and having to have specialist doctor care, bariatric surgery, for example, them, going through that process. And, the fat shaming or body shaming element of it would be judging that person, holding them up to a cultural ideal, and looking negatively at them for it, basically. And we're all guilty of it. I think people that have eating disorders or are more fixated on their own weight and body are certainly more susceptible to it. So as someone who has had a history of dieting and restrictive past, I know that I've done it. I've looked at someone, I've judged them, I've thought about somebody's body in a negative way, I've picked it apart, I've looked at myself in the mirror and I've said, you're too this, you're too that, you need to change, you need to be this, you need to be that. I know that I've grown up in a household that kind of, has had that language, and I see it and I recognise it in my friends or the people I know that have been fixated on their own weight and body. The friends who are normal eaters, I would say, and completely don't think about dieting or their bodies in that certain way, it's much, much less of an issue for them. So that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. And why is it bad? Why is it, how can language and thoughts be detrimental to our recovery? Well, they bloody can, massively. If you are looking at someone and judging someone for how they should appear or what they should be like in terms of size, it's really dangerous because, number one, we're putting sort of external parameters on something that is governed internally. Our bodies and our weight is determined by genetics and by our set point weight. That is something that I entirely believe, and not just believe, I have seen it in action in my own body. And as a result of that, because it is internally governed, to sort of put external parameters that are culturally interchangeable is really dangerous, because if you don't fall into those parameters of what you expect they should be, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So if you look at a body or your body or somebody's body and you think, well, they are too big or they are too small, then the next step that you would then take would be to, well, it should be changed and therefore we're going to change it. And it's applying this expectation and this judgment on something that needs to be let be. It's like looking at someone's foot size and saying their feet are too big, we're going to make them smaller, like they did in China all those years ago. Looking at it and thinking, right, we need to change it. We need to change something, which in today's society would seem crazy to change, because you think, well, if you have big feet, you have big feet, and that's it. So by talking and looking and understanding bodies in a way that is like they need to be changed, they need to be altered, it sets us up for wanting to change or alter them. And that's what's dangerous, because what we want to be practicing instead is acceptance and letting things be, and just being okay with what is. And that needs to be reflected in the way we talk to ourselves in recovery, and that needs to be reflected in the way that we look at others and speak to others, certainly, but also think about others. So for example, if you saw somebody that had a weight that was too thin in your mind, You might say they're too thin. You might catch yourself saying that. You might say it to somebody else, like, oh, look how thin they are. And it's kind of just about reining that back in and thinking, well, that's just their body. And okay, if they're too thin, what is too thin? Like, what is average and what is acceptable is not up to you to put that on somebody. As long as they are eating fully and eating to their hunger and eating enough and appropriately, which in a lot of the cases isn't the case. But as long as they are doing that, then the weight that they end up is the weight that they end up, and that has to happen both ways. If you're a bigger body and you're eating fully and to your hunger and you're letting your body do its thing, and you end up in a larger body, that has to be okay as well. We're not all going to end up being size 8, 10, whatever, models. We're not all going to be like that. We're all different. We're all different shapes and sizes. Some people have big boobs, other people have big bums, other people have small arms, big arms, whatever. Like, everybody is hugely different. And as I said, to kind of put that external pressure on others and on yourselves, and to verbalize that in a community or to other people, is just kind of exacerbating and continuing that expectation. That is the way that cultural ideals are passed on, through language, through media, through communication, essentially. So it's about changing that dialogue. And the body positivity community is doing great things. There's so many people on YouTube and Instagram that are already challenging those perceptions and challenging what is and isn't healthy, seen as healthy rather. And it's great. And it's just kind of being aware of that yourself and going and having a look at those people on YouTube, catching yourself when you are saying something negative about somebody else's body or judgmental in any way, and just trying to kind of put that back and make it neutral. So if you see somebody in the street and your immediate reaction is to look at them and think judgment, or they need to change their body, or their body is too X, too Y, too Z, you can then stop and say, right, that is body shaming, that is fattism, or that is just negative. I don't need to be doing that. I'm going to stop. Their body is their body, and that is just it. And that's not like censorship. It's just knowing that your thoughts and your feelings and your language can really contribute to how we as a society kind of perceive different bodies. And it's about acceptance, and that is something that, in order to move forward in your recovery, you're going to have to do it, because you're going to have to accept your body where it ends up. And for a lot of people, it's hugely difficult to do. It's not something simple. It's really hard, because we've got images of what we should be every day. You're going to have to start changing that dialogue, and challenging those thoughts if you want a robust and permanent recovery. You're going to have to change, maybe your stomach isn't going to look how you expected it to look. Your thighs are going to be a bit bigger or smaller. Maybe you are taller than you want to be, or shorter, and it's just things that you just have to accept, because that is genetics, that is your body. And you've spent so long trying to alter and change how you look that it's going to feel quite different to stop that and think, well, my body is deciding what I'm going to look like. You can dress differently, and you can try different makeup, and you can change your hair, and you can do different things to kind of play with your identity. But those genetically predetermined things, like your shoe size, like your eye colour, I mean, you can wear contacts, but your height, all those things are things that kind of make you you, and you need to be okay with them, and you need to accept them. And a huge part of that is being okay with and accepting that in other people. And that is, I think, one of the best parts of my recovery, because I've just got so much less judgmental about how other people look. And I think, a lot kinder to myself and also about other people. You know, if somebody needs an airline seatbelt extender, I don't think, ugh, they're just too big. You know, I think, poor them. You know, that's not a nice thing to have to go through. I hope they're okay, you know, or damn seats are too small or whatever. You know, it's just my thoughts and my reactions are different because having kind of been through similar things myself now in recovery, I have a lot more empathy for people, but also I am really working on challenging those internalized perceptions, because that is what's gonna make me a nicer person, and it's also gonna kind of help me continue on my own recovery, because I don't have these ridiculously high expectations for myself and for other people. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share today. So a little bit of homework. Anytime you catch yourself or other people body shaming or doing any sort of critical, judgmental analysis of someone else's body, you know, try and take it back to a point of neutrality. Try and don't engage in it. Challenge it if you want. Say, you know, don't body shame. You know, no body shaming, whatever. You might not feel comfortable to do that. You might just want to sort of brush past it, but you don't have to engage in it. You can acknowledge it and move on, and just think you're not gonna carry that on. Or you can challenge it. You can say to somebody, that's not on, you know why? That person might have problems with their body that we don't understand yet, or, you know, coming at it from a point of empathy and understanding as opposed to judgment and shaming is where we all really need to be, essentially. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So I hope you have a good week, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye.